Okay, everybody, I believe we are ready to roll.
That's correct.
Ben, how you doing today?
Doing really well. How are you doing, young man?
Doing fine. All right, guys. Sorry for the delay here. Okay, looks like we are streaming. We tried some different setup, and I don't want to get into it, but listen, we're here. Ben, sing today's song.
Maybe some babe. Wait.
Oh my God.
Maybe your baby made other plans. That's a Stevie Wonder song. It's an album from the 70s, way before any of you listeners were born, called Talking Book, and I've been listening. I just been listening to it over and over again. I love it so much. Perhaps you know it from the big hit, "You Are the Sunshine of My Life." Sing it, D.
Okay, so Brianna is on the live stream chat. Brianna, she says, Ben, no singing. Let's bring that rule back from the old show. Oh, Lord. Okay, so this works out so well. We know that people can hear us.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe your baby.
Oh, my goodness. All right, so we're good to go there. Sorry for the delay again, everybody. Big day today. Ben, any local news happening today? I don't know.
Strike, budgets, and Donald Trump. Let's not forget him. Oh, my goodness.
Your Ben Joravsky show for Wednesday, October 23rd is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and bringing back our program. First up, I say bringing back, but I mean, we've been back for a while now. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace, not Aerosmith Workers, Local 126 in District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9. The International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. And, of course, today's show was brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Ben, sing that song one more time for us, please.
Maybe your baby done made some other plans.
The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Wednesday, October 23rd, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, actor, comedian, and quite frankly, dear friend of the program, Pat Whalen is back. Activist Lavonte Stewart returns, and we welcome to our brand new studio, Ben, clean it up in there, third Congressional Democratic candidate, Marie Newman. And now your host, not an actor, comedian, activist, or candidate. Well, he's kind of an activist, but not a candidate. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Slush Fun Wednesday. And here's why. Got a tweet this morning. D, a tweet me.
Whoa.
A tweet. I made it from Gregory Pratt.
And you saw it. That's the most important, the craziest thing.
Ace reporter for the Chicago Tribune. Well, okay, I'd have to explain. Not really big on Twitter, as everybody knows. But my dear friend Pat Whalen, who'll be in the show, sent it to me. He texted me. So technically it was a text. I'm really good at, I've mastered the art of texting. Did you know that, D?
You're lying.
And anyway, Gregory Pratt, it was so nice of him to do this. It was in the middle of Mayor Lori Lightfoot's budget speech. She got to this, and he wrote, Mayor Lori Lightfoot with an applause line seemingly aimed at the Benny J show. Quote, the days of the TIF slush fund are over. D will be playing that a little later. Lori Lightfoot's little line about TIFs, and the crowd cheered. All right, woo! Nobody likes the TIF slush fund, I guess. Anyway, yes, indeed, folks, there's a teacher strikeout. Teachers are on the streets of Chicago trying to negotiate a contract with Lori Lightfoot's negotiators, but still, got to have a budget, D. So it was Lori Lightfoot broke away from the teacher strike to present her budget to the Chicago City Council. She gave a budget speech, and in that budget speech, she promised, among other things, to reform the whole budget process by reforming the TIFs, or as she put it, let's see, quote, she was changing the tax increment financing program, or what people refer to as TIF. I love that part. That may be my favorite line in the whole speech. The tax increment financing program, or what people refer to as TIF. That's like saying, I am changing the National Basketball Association, which some people refer to as the NBA. The reality is, folks, more people know it as the TIF than know it as the tax increment financing program. And everybody knows what TIF stands for in the city of Chicago. TIF stands for SCAM. It is a scam. You know it. I know it. I've been telling you about it for years and years and years. And at the heart of it, it's a slush fund. How is it a slush fund? Well, I'll tell you how it's a slush fund. You create the slush fund when you raise more property tax dollars for the TIFs then you have projects to fund. That means there's more money coming in than you spend. Hence, slush. It's free money. Not free as in you didn't pay it, because of course you pay it in terms of higher property taxes, but it's free money for the mayor to spend as she wants. Hence, a slush fund. All right? Now, but many people object to the slush fund for years and years. I've objected to the slush fund, but I'm starting to change my mind on that, and we'll get into that later in the show. But anyway, mayors are free to dip into it whenever they want, for whatever they want. Hence, it's a slush fund. For instance, in her budget speech, Mayor Lightfoot says she's going to spend $30 million or so in TIF dollars to help fill the budget gap. That's what she'll use from this year's slush fund to fill the budget deficit. Think about that. She needs $30 or so million to help fill the gap. She doesn't want to raise taxes any more than she's already done. So I know she figures to herself, I know what I'll do. I'll just dip into the TIF fund and find $30 million or so to help fill the budget gap. Now, here's the irony of irony, folks. In the speech, in which she is promising to get rid of the slush fund, she is dipping into the slush fund to help balance the budget. So on one hand, she's getting applause for getting rid of the slush fund, and on the other hand, she's getting applause for dipping into the slush fund. Everybody in Chicago, we love everything. We'll root for the slush fund to be eradicated, and we'll be rooting for the slush fund to be used. How about that in the city of Chicago? We can do two things. What do they always say? We can walk and chew gum. Anyway, listen, folks, here's the deal. The slush fund is key to funding Chicago government. I've said this for a while now. People don't seem to be upset that they're paying more in taxes to finance the property tax TIF slush fund. They don't seem to object to it. They don't seem to aware that they're even paying more in property taxes for it. If Mayor Lightfoot were to come out and tell the city council that she was raising the property tax rates to create $30 million or $34 million in money to help balance the budget, people would be mad. You're raising our taxes. But if she just takes 30 or so million, or 34 million, or whatever it is, out of the old TIF slide through your higher taxes, which you don't even know you're paying, everybody applauds. The same mayor who's bragging about getting rid of the slush fund is using the slush fund. I'll tell you this about Lori Lightfoot. First term mayor, but she knows how to play the game. We got a great show today, everybody. Patrick Whalen, a good friend of the show, will be here. We're talking Trump. Yes, it's Wednesday. I know what you're thinking. Where's Monroe? He's on the West Coast. He'll be back next week. So in the meantime, Pat Whalen will be sitting in for him. We'll be talking Trump. Pat's, we'll be talking about, while we're here in Chicago with our attentions diverted by TIFs, slush funds, budgets, teacher strikes, etc., all hell is breaking loose in Washington with Donald Trump and the impeachment process, and some riveting testimony yesterday by William Taylor, a former diplomat to Ukraine. So we'll be talking about that and other things. Trump's tweets. Pat Whalen loves talking about Trump's tweets. So we'll be talking a lot of Trump news. Lavonte Stewart will be here, the pride and joy of South Shore. We'll be talking about how the teacher strike is affecting communities like South Shore, how the budget affects communities like South Shore, and plus some of the enterprising programs Lavonte Stewart is championing for South Shore. And then at 2:30, Marie Newman will be here, and she is the congressional candidate in the 3rd Congressional District, running in the primary against Dan Lipinski. You remember she ran back in 2018, came very close to defeating Lipinski. Lipinski, of course, is perhaps the most conservative Democrat in Congress. So it'll be really interesting to hear what Marie Newman has to say about what's going on in Washington with congressional impeachment, et cetera, and so forth. But before we do any of that, the man from Alton, the the man they call the doctor, with the news.
Hey, everybody, how's it going? I'm Dennis. All right, all of our Chicago political junkies have been waiting for this time to come since August of this year.
Come October, I'll address those challenges further in my budget speech.
The wait is over. That day is today. It's Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot's budget address. And yes, he mentioned it earlier. Ben was talking about it earlier here.
The days of the TIF slush fund are over.
And our host, maybe the biggest Chicago political junkie on the planet, Ben Joravsky, has been waiting for about 2 hours now to weigh in on this. There's more where that came from on that intro, people. By the way, Mayor Lori Lightfoot will actually be in the same building as us.
Is she going to stop by?
A little after 2 o'clock. She's making her post-budget address media rounds. Is she going to stop? What do you think, Ben? You think she's going to stop by?
Well, do you have any more of those crackers that Mark Sims left?
No, I ate them all.
Oh, well, see, that she won't stop by. How about those lifesavers that Mark Sims left?
To be honest, I'm not sure if I should go out to the press room and try to give a live report on my phone or lock the door in our studio after Ben Joravsky's latest Chicago Reader columns. We're going to talk more about that budget address, but first, Lori had some company outside City Hall before her budget address. Chicago teachers. The Chicago Teachers Union strike is on day 5, or if you read some of our friends of the conservative persuasion, or those who may be on Team Lightfoot, day 7.
Day 7, right, if you count the weekend, okay, because the kids would have been in school on the weekend. Well, technically, Ben, there's like Saturday school. Oh, really? Okay, all right.
And what we've been doing here in the last week since the strike started is we just try to play both sides of it here. We only have audio of Lori's budget address, so we'll go to the teachers here. Earlier this morning, CTU President Jesse Sharkey was outside the teachers' rally as they were going downtown Chicago, wearing a White Sox hat. We learned something new today. Jesse Sharkey, White Sox fan.
I did not know that.
Yeah, invite him to a game sometime, Ben. You guys can go along.
I'm a big Sox fan. I like the Sox. Maybe next year they'll be good.
Here's Jesse Sharkey from this morning.
Last night in negotiations, it became clear that the major movement, which had been happening over the weekend, has slowed down. Right now, the mayor needs to add resources and show the will to settle a contract. We have been told that she's willing to put promises about staffing and class size into writing. Those promises need to be adequate. Right now, the city is saying that they'll add $700,000 to address oversized classes in almost 100 high schools. $700,000 to address overcrowding in 100 high schools. It's $7,000 a school. It does not get us to adequacy. It's not enough. So our message today is that we are bringing our members, dressed in red, but also in purple and green and black and all the other colors that we wear, to emphasize the fact that we are not just a union involved in a labor strike. We're also parents, we're members of the community, we represent the interests of the city of Chicago. And the people of the city of Chicago demand funding and resources to go to the services of the city. We have to have schools that work for our children. We need a budget which speaks to our priorities, not just the priorities of developers. The mayor is going to give a budget address in a few hours, and it will be a address that talks about shared sacrifice and austerity. Probably should talk about raising our taxes. Probably should talk about cutting our services. That's not acceptable to us. This is the same mayor that gave a green light to a $1.3 billion TIF giveaway, a giveaway to wealthy developers in the quote-unquote blighted Lincoln Park neighborhood of the city. More hundreds of millions to give away to the 78. This is not right. If there's $1 billion for wealthy developers, there needs to be money for our schools to get a contract. There needs to be money to address overcrowded classrooms in some of our poorest schools. There needs to be money to put a nurse and a social worker and other critical support staff in all of our classrooms. We are not giving up this fight until we get what is just and what is right. We have a desire to get back to our classrooms.
Jesse Sharkey's starting to sound like a column by Ben Joravsky.
Is that you in the crowd cheering? Woo!
No, they're up too early for me, D.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They were up like 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm still snoozing, you know what I mean? Hey, got rock star hours, okay? But listen, here's the deal, folks. The teachers are asking for the mayor to dedicate money for more nurses and more social workers and more counselors and more librarians. Money's a real deal that the mayor does not want to dedicate. She doesn't want to be contractually obligated to hire these staffers. And so that's where we are right now. And the people in the city of Chicago have to decide, do they want to spend their tax dollars on nurses, social workers, and counselors? Now, a lot of people in the city of Chicago don't want to spend their tax dollars on anything. They feel overtaxed. And so that's obviously an obstacle in the way of the Chicago Teachers Union when they try to win over public support. And so they talk about, more progressive forms of taxes. We've had so many different politicians, so many different progressives, so many different socialists come through this studio, talk about more progressive taxation in the city of Chicago to raise the money we need to pay for like nurses and social workers, et cetera. There doesn't seem to be any support for that from Lori Lightfoot and her allies in City Hall. It doesn't seem to be even on the agenda. So it seems like we're sort of existing still in the Rahm, Mayor Daley worldview, where we work with fees and fines, like raising taxes on, let's say, Uber and Lyft Uber Lyft trips, raising the tax on restaurants, which I think we'll call the Ben tax because I love eating out, and then hoping that there'll be money coming in from the sale of reefer, et cetera, and so forth. So we're not heading in the direction of the most progressive form of taxation, the kind of thing that J.B. Pritzker was talking about with his fair tax. So that seems to be like the main sticking point between the teachers and Lori Lightfoot. Lori Lightfoot is not committing herself to the progressive forms of taxation that progressives want. And that's just a reality that we have to deal with here in the city of Chicago right now. And I'm not quite sure how this teacher strike will get reconciled at this point, D, unless Lori Lightfoot just quietly decides to, one, make a promise to hire teachers without really having the money to hire them and just punt it, which is, by the way, a classic move in the city of Chicago. Would not be surprised if she ultimately does that. Or two, she dips more into the TIF slush fund to pay for to pay for nurses, et cetera, which she might do. She can definitely do that. There's a lot of slush in that fund for her to dip into. So I'm not quite sure how this teacher strike is going to end at this very moment, but it'll be one of those two options on the table.
Once again, we're at day 5 of the Chicago teacher strike, and you can always assure that we here on the Ben Joravsky Show, we stand
Yay for our teachers! Yay for our teachers!
with the teachers. All right, now let's talk about Lori Lightfoot's budget address this morning. He's for the teachers, you know what I mean?
Yay for our teachers! Yay for our teachers!
Everybody had bad stuff to say about him. He's for the teachers.
Did you see him in the crowd outside of Jesse Sharkey? He was wearing a red shirt and a red White Sox hat, okay?
Oh.
And he was, yay, Jesse Sharkey. Actually, the first time I ever saw Bruce Rauner, he was on WTTW. There was, what do they call that show? I forget, Chicago Tonight. He was on Chicago Tonight with Jesse Sharkey. This was right after the teacher strike of 2012, and they were debating. He was really out there talking about, that he was disappointed. He didn't think Mayor Rahm was hard enough on the teachers in the Chicago teacher strike, and he thought that too much money was being spent on the public schools, and more schools should have been closed, and they should get rid of teachers unions and use our dollars to finance charter schools, because charter school teachers know enough to shut up, go to work, and not go on strike, and not join a union. And of course, so much has changed since 2012. Many of the charter schools in the city of Chicago have unionized, and some of them have gone on strike. Their teachers are demanding more money and resources, just like the regular CTU, the regular Chicago public school teachers. So the world has changed a little bit since Bruce Rauner and Jesse Sharkey sat down for that great debate at WTTW.
All right, I have some audio of today's budget address from our mayor, Lori Lightfoot. Ben, give us your overall thoughts here. I mean, I know you're a TIF junkie, all right? Set that aside. Aside from the TIF talk, what was your overall thoughts on the budget address?
Oh, it's a classic budget address by a mayor of the city of Chicago. I already gave her a shout out for being acting like an old hand. By the way, the build up toward it. I mean, so much love for Lori Lightfoot in this town right now. And I have some friends, dear friends of mine, who work in the communications team of Lori Lightfoot. Let me just give them a shout out. I'm sure they don't want me to say their name, but you guys are doing a masterful job, because Lori Lightfoot is getting great press as she heads into the budget session. Or maybe it is as the reporters in town just really dislike teachers and the Chicago Teachers Union, who knows. But anyway, it was a classic budget address. She did what she took a page from Mayor Rahm and Mayor Daley. I'm not sure if Mayor Daley did. She said had somebody in the city council take a bow for doing good services to his community. She talked about how she really cares about bridging the divide between the wealthy neighborhoods and the poor neighborhoods. She talked about having a more equitable distribution of city money. She talked about mental health patients. She did not promise to reopen mental health clinics that Mayor Rahm closed, but at least she talked about the mental health needs in the city of Chicago. So, she said all the right things, Dee, but the reality is, as I said earlier, this city is facing a real challenge. How do we finance? If we want to break down the gaps between the wealthy and the poor neighborhoods, if we want to use our resources to fund development in poor neighborhoods or improve public schools in poor neighborhoods or help kids in poor neighborhoods, let's say, who are homeless, if we're going to adequately finance those programs that are needed, it's going to cost money. So how do we raise that money? People in Chicago are feeling overtaxed already. If we're going to make that commitment that Lori Lightfoot says she wants to make, we're going to have to figure out a progressive way to finance it. And that was absent from her speech. So in some ways, it was very similar to Rahm. Rahm didn't want to head down that path. He didn't want to talk about progressive forms of taxation, but he did want to champion all the things. Because they're all Democrats, D. They all want to sound like, they're Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or even Joe Biden or Barack Obama, that they care about poor people. But funding programs that help poor people, I don't know. That's another ball game. So my overall, listen, I'm happy that it's Lori Lightfoot sitting in the fifth floor and not Rahm Emanuel, because in many ways she's just a more diplomatic person and she's not as obnoxious as Rahm was. But in some ways, she picked up a few tricks of the trade from Rahm Emanuel in that speech.
Oh, man, it looks like Mayor Rahm would like to weigh in.
Take a chill pill, man.
Oh, sorry, Rahm. Okay, well, hold on. Let me drink some water.
Oh, get some water. There you go. That's
you,
water,
Rahm.
no kind of Kool-Aid right now?
Oh, hold on. Let me, hold on. That's some Lori Lightfoot cool. Dee, she's a masterful politician. Did I tell you that? She's a brilliant orator. Did I tell you that? Hold on, a little more.
Hey, send your hate mail Ben Joravsky's way. joravben@aol.com.
Hold on, Dee. She reformed the TIF program, the tax increment financing program, which many people refer to as TIF.
All right, we're getting to the TIFs in a minute. My God, you have a problem when it comes to these TIFs. All right, so let's hear from Mayor Lightfoot in the budget.
By improving how we collect the debt we are owed, this budget also saves an additional $25 million by moving to a new system that ensures payments are expedited and more companies are brought into compliance. This budget restructures some of our city departments, ensuring taxpayers get the greatest value for their dollars while still receiving the highest quality service. And as we announced earlier this month, this budget reforms our public safety agencies by streamlining the administrative functions of our police, fire, and OEMC departments into a single agency, the new Office of Public Safety Administration, which will immediately save the city $2 million. But these are more than just cost-saving measures. By consolidating these units, we will be putting more than 160 police officers and fire personnel back on the streets where they can do the most good.
All right, police. Listen, people. I always tell this to Carlos Ramirez Rosa comes in the studio. Remember those debates we've had with him? Carlos, one of the most progressive, liberal, whatever you want to call it, lefty alderman in the Chicago City Council. And he would be talking about cutting police or cutting the police budget. I would say, well, I don't know many communities in the city of Chicago that want police cut. There's some issues about police relations in the black community over the years, absolutely, and the issues of police brutality, absolutely. But by and large, most people in the city of Chicago want more police officers, not less. So when Lori Lightfoot says we're going to put 160 more, I think it was 160 more cops and firefighters. I don't know if she distinguished between cops and firefighters. That will draw applause, because the reality is most people in the city of Chicago, you ask them where they want their tax dollars to go, that'd be one thing they want their tax dollars to go to. No doubt about it.
That means more police doing work in your neighborhoods and your wards. Likewise, we will be merging the Department of Innovation and Technology with the Department of Fleet and Facility Management to create a new department that manages assets and information, strengthening the operations of both departments by combining their shared efficiencies, eliminating redundancies, all while reducing costs by approximately $1 million this coming year. And yet, while day-to-day operations of our technology infrastructure will be moved into one department, our Chief Information Officer and Chief Data Officer will then be placed in the Mayor's office to ensure technology policy is seamlessly incorporated with cutting-edge approaches in how government can work more efficiently and in greater partnership with Chicago's world-class tech community.
Hold on, Lori. Have some water.
Okay, the water bit.
Yes. Have some more of that Kool-Aid. Listen, what she's talking about there is, again, this is classic mayor budget talk. Most people don't know what she's talking about. I'm going to be more efficient. I'm going to streamline. I'm going to take this department and merge it with that department, and then we'll be able to save money and have more money. It sounds great, but most people do not know what she's talking about, D, And the city council, the aldermen are sitting there nodding their heads going, can I get a job out of this? Maybe somebody I know can get a job at City Hall out of there, not clapping their head. I mean, that is classic mayor rhetoric in a budget speech where, you want to avoid talking about raising taxes. You want to avoid talking about raising fees. So what you do is you accentuate the efficiencies you're making in the whole entire operation of budget. And I've been watching mayors make the city more efficient. Going back to Harold Washington, he was making the city more efficient. Eugene Sawyer made it more efficient. Mayor Daley was every year mayor for 20 odd years. Mayor Daley was making it more efficient. And then Romrey, Mr. Efficiency himself. So you would think we'd run out of ways to make government more efficient. But nope, somehow or other, despite all these year after year's plans to make government more efficient, there's still more deficiencies to eradicate. So I applaud Mayor. I'm sorry, guys. I've heard a lot of budget speeches down through the years. You know what, D? If you can make government more efficient, more power to you, right? So good for her for making government more efficient.
All right, and it's the moment Ben has been waiting to riff on ever since he heard the damn thing.
Oh, my goodness. All right.
And this budget makes key reforms to Chicago's tax increment finance program, or what many people refer to as TIF. This year's additional surplus to the city is $31.4 million. But more than that, my team is undertaking a detailed review to reform TIF and align it more closely with our economic development needs and our values, accountability, and transparency. The days of the TIF slush fund are over.
Yeah, I believe it. I'm on board.
I believe it too. Man, the funny thing is, the days of the TIF slush fund are over at the very time I'm turning around and going, you know what, expand the slush fund. Once again, if the mayor of the city of Chicago goes this way, I'm going to go the other way. I'm kind of good-natured about it, and I'm being a little satirical when I say it, but I'll
that
listen.
Lightfoot Kool-Aid cup's half empty.
Hold on, man. God, I love that budget speech. Anyway, by the way, D, that is my favorite line, though, where she goes, tax increment financing, which many people refer to as TIF. Like anybody knows it as tax increment financing. Everybody knows it as TIF. TIF equals SCAM. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. And it's like I said, the National Basketball Association, which many people refer to as the NBA. Whoa, I did not know that, man. I always thought it was the National Basketball Association. All right, here's the deal, folks. You pay more in your property taxes every year because of a TIF. When a TIF is created, you automatically pay more in property taxes. This is TIF 101. Why do you pay more in property taxes? Because when they create a TIF, that district, the property taxpayers in that district send a certain portion of their property taxes to the TIF fund. That slush fund that we're supposed to eradicate, all right? So when they kick more to the TIF slush fund, you have to pay more to compensate. That's why I call it a tax hike. Now, I've been calling it a tax hike for years and years and years, and guess what? I'm pretty much the only guy in town who calls it a tax hike. You all pay the tax hike, but everybody pretends as though it's not a tax hike. So I decided D, to raise the white flag. I surrendered. I put it in writing. It's in a reader column. You can go read it. I go, you know what? Mayors, you win. If the people of the city of Chicago are content to pay more in property taxes when they don't realize it's a property tax hike by sending it to the TIF slush fund, then let's use that as a vehicle to pay our obligations. Let's just turn the entire city into a giant TIF district and use all the extra revenues that people pay to pay off our pension obligations, to hire more police officers, to hire more firefighters, to pay for raises for police and firefighters, and to hire more nurses, social workers, and counselors for our public schools. We'll raise millions and millions of dollars, but since we don't actually recognize it as paying more in money, it'll be like we're not paying more in money. It's amazing how people in Chicago can pay more in property taxes, but not think they're paying more in property taxes if it's going to the TIF. So you know what, D? Here's the flag. I raise it. I raise the white flag. I surrendered. And no sooner do I surrender than Mayor Lori Lightfoot turns around and says, we're getting rid of the TIF slush. I can't win in this town, D.
Yeah, you can't. Okay.
Now we have more work to do.
Oh, yes, we do.
Every single one of these measures grew out of our central mission to build a greater city, to leave it stronger, fairer, and more prosperous than we found it. A city where kids who look like me, come from families like mine, don't have to beat the odds to get a great education, a good paying job, raise a family, and pursue their dreams. As I outlined in my State of the City address, Chicago is staring down an $838 million budget gap, one of the largest gaps in our history. Getting that number down to zero required ingenuity, but more than that, it required hard choices across both expenditures and revenues. But this budget is more than a simple math problem. It's a value statement for what we prioritize and the kind of city that we want to be. The kind of city where strong, widespread, and dynamic middle class isn't shrinking, but actually growing again. Where every resident feels safe to walk in their neighborhood, day or night. Where we all pay our fair share.
I agree with her 100% when she says a budget should be a value statement. Absolutely. And I would think the Chicago Teachers Union, they would agree with her on that point. That just basic principle, the budget is a value statement. And that's why the teachers are saying, let's show our commitment to values like fairness and equity by spending more money, by dedicating more money in our budget to pay for nurses and social workers and librarians and counselors so that kids, poor kids who are in the Chicago public schools can get a leg up, can begin to compete with wealthier kids. That's what this strike is about. And Lori Lightfoot seems to agree with them. Make this a value statement. So I think there's room for, there you go. Stacey Davis Gates, I hope you were listening. Give Lori Lightfoot a text right now and tell her let's meet and talk about how we can show Chicago is committed to shared values and an appreciation of doing more for those who have less. There you go, D. I'm looking on the bright side there. It's a value statement, all right? So don't say that I'm all negative and pessimistic. I found something positive to say.
Oh, wait, that cup's half full. Yeah, do that cup bit for a fifth time. Heard it's better the fifth time around, actually.
I'm almost out of water. I need to get more water or Kool-Aid.
All right, everybody, weigh in with your thoughts on Lori Lightfoot's address. We have several of you on the YouTube live stream weighing in. Being very candid. We'll read those comments a little later on, but also on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page, at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show. We're asking you your thoughts. If you could describe Mayor Lightfoot's budget address in one word, what would it be and why? We'll throw it over to you, Ben, in one word.
Old school.
Old school.
Yeah, she took it right out of the textbook.
We'll put a hyphen, old hyphen school, make it one word. How about that?
Or textbook, whatever you want to call it. I like old school, man.
So send us your thoughts. We'll try to read those on the air as today's program rolls along. And there it was, Lori Lightfoot's budget address in review. And yes, the Chicago teachers are still striking. Don't go anywhere. The Ben Joravsky Show will be right back. Coming up after this short little break, our dear friend, actor, comedian, and multi-talented man, the one, the only Pat Whalen, will be joining us. Don't go anywhere. It's the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Hey, podcast fans, that's you. I mean, I'm assuming so because you're listening to this podcast, right? So you're a fan? The Sun-Times political web series, The Fran Spielman Show, is now available as a podcast. The Fran Spielman Show features weekly interviews with the lawmakers, journalists, and others who are shaping our city. Fran holds nothing back. She goes deep into City Hall to bring you the real scoop on Chicago politics. And now, NOW Now, you can listen to her show on all of your favorite podcast apps. Head to City Hall with Fran and get even more great political coverage from the Chicago Sun-Times. Listen and subscribe now at suntimes.com/Fran-show. Once again, suntimes.com/ and for those who can't spell Fran, FRAN-show. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Young Patrick Whalen is in the studio, host of Yesterday's News, a great new podcast that is produced by our very own Dr. D.
That's correct.
Wouldn't you know it? Yes, and Robert Mueller stops by every once in a while, too. It's a star-studded cast.
He kills me every time he does that thing with the Mueller. You know, I'm not expecting it. Oh, that's correct.
That's not in my purview.
Yeah. One of the most disappointing testimonies ever in the history.
Oh, what page was that?
But anyway, oh my goodness. People tuning in, you think it's Wednesday. Monroe will be here. Monroe is on the West Coast. One more time, he'll be here next week.
I already went to Moscow.
Maybe he's out there. He's cutting a deal with Putin. Or as he says, Putin. All right. Anyway, Patrick Whalen, Yesterday's News, which I call, I can't believe this stuff is real. I want to say another word, but Dennis won't let me swear on the show. I can't believe this stuff is real. So what are some of the things you highlight in your show?
Well, the whole idea, Ben, is that, the news is just so thick and fast these days under President Donald Trump that we just try to clean it up a little bit and try to catch things that might have slipped through the cracks. I'm on Twitter a lot, following a lot of different reporters who are keeping track of Trump's, constant barrage of, oh my God, did he really say that-ness? But, he takes up a lot of the news cycle, right? He takes a lot of oxygen in the room with his ridiculous tweets and things he says in real life. So we try to follow, other departments in the government, appointed officials, even if they're just acting appointed officials, and, stuff that might not get as much attention as, say, I don't know, a tweet here and there. Sometimes you got to let them fight, Ben. You got to let them fight. That's him talking about the Kurds.
No, that's, the Kurds fighting with the Turks.
No big deal.
Thousands of people getting killed and communities, homes, towns getting bombed. But yeah, let's just let them fight.
No big deal.
Yeah, like it's kids in a playground.
Yeah.
By the way, which is not even a great idea about kids in a playground.
Yeah, let them fight.
Let's just
What? What do you mean?
The one kid has the other kid down. He's just pounding him. Well, yeah, they're just fighting.
Well, it sounds like he went to the Fred Trump School of Parenting.
Yeah,
So
Fred Trump.
There you go.
Daddy Fred. All right, give me an example of one of the things you've highlighted in the last show.
Well, last episode we talked about. So actually, the episode before last. So we record on Sundays typically, Dennis and I. And there is this resort in Florida. You might have heard of it. It's called Mar-a-Lago. It's beautiful, beautiful place. I don't know if you heard, but there's this organization called ACT for America. It was started by a woman after 9/11. She is anti-Muslim, Ben. There's really no way to sugarcoat this. She thinks that Muslims are not Americans. She says it's impossible for Muslims to be loyal Americans. That's a direct quote, loyal. And their organization was pursuing having a conference at Mar-a-Lago. And they received their permits, they got confirmation, and then it got out into the news that they were going to do this. And obviously, you know, a lot of organizations are looking to have conferences or parties or whatever at Mar-a-Lago because, as we say, your chance of running into the president at the urinal goes up 800% when you go to Mar-a-Lago, right? So they're looking for probably a little influence there. But again, they're an anti-Muslim group, so that's not good, right? So Mar-a-Lago came under pressure. The administration of Mar-a-Lago said, you know what? We're canceling it. ACT for America is not coming to Mar-a-Lago. Well, 2 days before ACT was told that they are not going to have their conference at Mar-a-Lago, a different anti-Muslim group, I'd have to look up what that group is actually, ACT for America.
Watch how fast he's looking stuff up. Ben, take notes.
No, I am taking notes. First of all, he has a computer. I got the cell phone.
Computer.
My Bulls cell phone. I'm always impressed.
Bull season.
That's
opener
why I'm
tonight.
wearing red.
You pumped, huh?
Yeah, very pumped. I'll be watching. Oh my God, I'll be going with Cap and Norm. We'll be watching. We're very excited. Bulls versus Charlotte.
Pat, you got that pulled up?
Yeah.
Easy now on the sports, Ben. I think the point is that this other group, it's not ACT for America, but it is a different group.
Okay.
I'll look it up a little later on in the show. But the point is, 2 days before ACT for America was told you're not having your conference at Mar-a-Lago, this other anti-Muslim group was approved to have their conference at Mar-a-Lago. And so this is a great encapsulation of what I tried to do at yesterday's news. It's kind of the three-card Monty of the Trump administration with his business interests. Of course, you know he's a businessman.
That is
We
correct.
can talk more about that in a bit.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah,
But, you know, so what we try to keep track of is, you know, while you're looking at the left hand, I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at the right, collect all these stories. You know, I'm definitely looking at the right. That's a good way to put it. The far right even, Ben. And then we try to collect those stories, put them all together, record it, and I try not to lose my cool. Dennis edits out all the parts of me losing it. No,
I think you should put them in.
No, it's good. It's just me going like, I can't believe this is, I can't believe this, you know, stuff like that. He cuts all that stuff out.
Yeah,
it's a good idea.
Favorite parts. Well, what went down yesterday, I don't know, you've had a time, obviously you haven't had a chance to put this in your show, but what went down yesterday was extraordinary. We were in the studio, so I missed it live, but I've been following it obsessively ever since. William Taylor, who was the top diplomat to Ukraine, appointed, I guess it was in August, came out and testified in Congress yesterday. It was behind closed doors, so we can't see it, his testimony, but the transcript was released, and he just blatantly, he came right out and said it. It's that we were been talking about whether it was quid pro quo when Donald Trump had this phone conversation with the president of Ukraine and said, you know, it would be nice if you did a little investigation into Joe Biden's son and his dealings in Ukraine. So it was, you know, immediately the acknowledgement was, the allegation was, it was a quid pro quo. He was exchanging aid to Ukraine for an investigation into Joe Biden and his son. But William Taylor's testimony goes one step further, Pat, and he makes it clear it wasn't quid pro quo, it was extortion. It was, and this is William, I'm paraphrasing William Taylor's testimony. Essentially, William Taylor got an order, got the word from other White House aides that aid money for military aid assistance to Ukraine have been halted, which the Congress had approved, have been halted by the White House under the direction of President Trump, and would not be turned over until the president of Ukraine publicly announced that he was launching an investigation into Joe Biden and Joe Biden's son. So I don't even call that quid pro quo. The money had been appropriated to assist Ukraine in their war with Russia, which is what it is, a war. But Donald Trump was saying, no, we will not release this money until you publicly launch this investigation.
Well, I even, would dissect what you're saying here, because I mean, did he say you need to begin an investigation and announce it publicly? No. He just said say publicly that you're having an investigation. And I could see him actually saying, we don't really care if you actually have it or not. We just want people to think that you are. That's all. Yeah, 161 mil, no big deal. And my biggest stuff with this is that I can't believe that, I believe less than 2 weeks ago, Republican members of Congress were saying there was no quid pro quo. That did not happen. And now, and we went from did it happen to it happened, is it okay? To, when he was on the lawn of the White House saying, yes, I did. And you know what? I think China should do it too.
Yeah. Well, this just goes beyond simple accusation, because we're talking essentially about, how do I put this? Halting aid to Ukraine when they're in the middle of a war with Russia. You talk about lives at stake. You're talking about the balance of power in that region. You're talking about the United States' credibility as an ally to Ukraine. Absolutely, all that is out the window because Donald Trump. You're right. You're absolutely correct. He probably didn't care if there was.
Who cares?
He doesn't believe in investigations anyway.
Perception is reality, first of all, and second of all, I think it's. I'm not really surprised, Ben, that it's actually extortion and not a quid pro quo, because I don't know Latin, I don't speak it, I don't translate it, I skipped that day in school, so I would rather go with extortion because it's an easier word for me to say and define.
Well, extortion is pretty hardcore. It's like, you aren't getting it. I'm holding it back. All right, you want it? You deliver.
President Trump, did you perform a quid pro quo? No, thank you, I don't like seafood.
That's a very good imitation. But anyway, so that was William Taylor's testimony yesterday.
15-page opening statement.
Yeah,
I heard that elicited a lot of sighs and groans from the press corps.
Here's one of the key parts. Toward the end of an otherwise normal meeting, a voice in the call, the person was off screen, said that she was from the Office of Management and Budget. This is Taylor talking. And that her boss had instructed her not to approve any additional spending of security assistance for Ukraine until further notice. I and others sat in astonishment. The Ukrainians were fighting the Russians and counted on not only the training and weapons, but also the assurance of U.S. support. All that the OMB staff person said was that the directive had come from the president to the chief of staff to OMB. In an instant, I realized that one of the key pillars of our support for Ukraine was threatened. The irregular policy channel is running contrary to the goals of longstanding U.S. policy. And that irregular policy channel he's alluding to is what he's saying is Rudolph Giuliani and others sort of directing U.S. policy in Ukraine outside of normal channels, outside of the State Department.
With Tweedledee and Tweedledum.
With Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And, I don't think there's anyone in the studio old enough to remember Iran-Contra, but that was the controversy in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan had set up a secret policy, a secret office within the White House that was going to swap. The way it was going to work, they were going to swap money, take money from Iran, use it to buy weapons for the Contras in Nicaragua, and in exchange, the hostages would be released from Iran. So at least you were getting hostages for your subversive inside the White House, off-the-shelf government. In this case, we're not. What are we getting? We're getting dirt for Donald Trump's reelection campaign.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think I'm sure we'll get into the skiff raid 2019 here of all the they're ordering pizzas right now for the Republicans who are invading the skiff right now outside the testimony or the hearings. I don't even know specifically what these hearings are on, but I'm following along on Twitter, and that's all happening. And all that is any Republican who's running for reelection is running scared and doesn't want to get caught under the boot. I forget the gentleman's name, but one person who said, one Republican representative who said, I didn't come here to get reelected. He said he spoke out against President Trump and said this was a quid pro quo. Seriously, like the emperor has no clothes. What are we all talking about here? This is ridiculous. not 24 hours later, he announced he was not running for re-election. So clearly there's some clout being thrown around behind the scenes where, look at Lindsey Graham. Even Lindsey Graham was talking about the Kurds in Syria earlier this week and saying, this is not good. And now he's defending the lynching comment, which, take your pick, Ben. Throw a dart at the board.
We'll get into that gets into the category of tweets. But yeah, this story was breaking that Pat alluded to. The Republican congressman sort of had invaded a hearing, a private, behind doors, closed door hearing where testimony was being given in terms of the impeachment inquiry. And I haven't been able to follow it because I've been on the air, but all hell is breaking loose. And it's clear that there's nothing resembling any like a bipartisan effort to investigate what went down with the White House, to investigate what is clearly, based on William Taylor's testimony, evidence of extortion, where they were arm twisting Ukraine into, announcing an investigation as opposed to launching an investigation.
Who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
What's the difference?
All they needed, you're right, was a soundbite of the Ukrainian president saying, we are launching an investigation into Joe Biden. And you're right. No one's going to believe it. And
who cares?
Yeah, okay, now can I have my money?
Exactly.
And then the money comes into him.
He's not a president. He's not a businessman. He is a reality television show host.
Yeah.
That's why three-card Monty comes into play. It's why he's talking. One other example I wanted to mention, Ben, that we talked about on yesterday's news is that violent video that came out, again, less than 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you saw, but it was someone pasted Donald Trump's head over Colin Firth from the movie Kingsman, for those keeping track at home. But there's a scene where he's shooting people in a church. It is one of the most violent things I've probably ever seen in my life. But someone, again, pasted Donald Trump's head over the person who was shooting people, and over the people being shot's heads, there were things like Black Lives Matter, CNN, basically people who talked out against Donald Trump. Now, there are plenty of videos online of, Trump supporters making ridiculous troll, content, right? Things that are going to upset people who don't support the president and his policies. The reason this video was brought to light, specifically in an article by the New York Times, is because it was shown at a conference at Doral Resort in Miami, again, owned by Donald Trump. But I think an excellent use of the three-card Monty technique, again, by President Donald Trump. By the end of the week, you weren't talking about the video at Doral. You were talking about the G7 at Doral. And it switched the whole script. And this is exactly what he does. He knows how to do, look over here. He would have been a great dog trainer in another life, maybe. I don't know. But I think, the American people and their attention span is really being tested in terms of his ability to spin, basically.
Yeah. Well, it's really hard to, how do I put this, build a bipartisan investigation into Donald Trump when roughly 80% of the Republican Party is determined to support him regardless. Mm-hmm. And these outrages come out and they're quickly dismissed. The people who report on the outrages are accused of promoting fake news, or they say it's a witch hunt. No matter what is revealed about Donald Trump, there's no objective reality when it comes to his supporters. So it's a really difficult time. If you're looking for a standard to be upheld in our country right now, it's very difficult to uphold a standard. So you have Republican congressmen, invading this hearing, this closed door hearing, yes, on the grounds that some kind of witch hunt is taking place there, as opposed to joining in the hearing, mm-hmm, and asking questions and participating in it.
No.
So it's very difficult to have anything that we just all agree on is like an objective reality.
Exactly. And I would add, I don't want to take your eye off the ball here too much, but this is exactly what, in my opinion, what Putin wanted. There is no direct, one thing I will say about Donald Trump is he's an idiot. He sleeps 4 hours a night. He eats nothing but garbage. He might be addicted to Sudafed. And so he is not, I don't know how many brain cells he has to rub together, but he is smart enough to hire people who don't need to be explicitly told what to do. Michael Cohen is a great example. Make this go away, right? If that was brought into court, they'd be able to defend the fact, well, he didn't explicitly tell him to do that. And I think that's what we have in terms of Russian collusion. Russia didn't want Donald Trump to win. They want us to question the very fabric of our democracy. and the institutions that operate therein. And I think today is just another step in that, I don't want to say master plan, but, draft. I don't know.
And you have any great Trump tweets you want to take the deep dive into?
Do I, Ben? Thank you so much for having me, my friend. First of all, I'd like to say I have a few statistics before we get into these tweets.
Okay.
On October 9th, Donald Trump sent 37 tweets attacking past presidents, current politicians, and U.S. law enforcement. So that was on the 9th. He sent 37 tweets.
In one day.
That's correct. That's correct. For those who don't follow Donald Trump on Twitter, on October 14th, there were 6 attacks on U.S. Congress, 5 attacks on U.S. citizens, 4 attacks on U.S. companies, 3 foreign policy abuses, 2 conspiracy theories, and 1 reality TV update.
Wait, what was the reality TV update? Does it say?
I think I don't even remember what show it was. I don't remember. I will look and come back.
No,
to it, but
I'm just
he
curious.
commented on television basically. Okay. Oh God, it wasn't Big Brother or something like that. It was just off the beaten path. It was like something related to that.
Just
or you know what? I'll bet it was Spicer.
From
Dancing with the Stars. But he didn't say great dancing. He was just like, we love Sean, great guy. And then on the 22nd, which of course was yesterday, there were like over 50 tweets in 24 hours, and nothing says stable genius. And I'm not concerned about allegations of corruption, like many, many, many tweets. So, obviously it's always a moving target with President Donald Trump, but there are a few really good ones in here. Let me see if I can find a tweet. Obviously there's the lynching one, Ben, that you, I'm sure, talked about earlier.
Well, I'm actually going to be talking about that later, and
okay.
That was the one where Donald Trump said he was the victim of a lynching, and he set off quite a bit of furor on the internet. People responding. I'll be talking about that a little later with our next guest, but maybe ask Marie Newman her opinions of that tweet as well.
There you are.
Has he tweeted yet about Eddie Johnson, the Chicago police chief?
No, he hasn't actually. And when I spoke to you off the air, I misspoke. It was actually part of the public comment section before Lori Lightfoot's budget speech today, if you can call it that. One of the public commenters said it is a disgrace that Eddie Johnson is technically the host of President Trump when he comes to town to give the speech in front of the police chiefs.
International Association of Chiefs of Police.
Yes, and he says it's a disgrace that the chief wouldn't participate in that,
so one of the somebody criticized. Okay, so here's the story as it's breaking. Donald Trump will be coming to Chicago. He hasn't come to Chicago in a long time, and everybody knows he uses Chicago as a punching bag whenever it's convenient, just to sort of bash Obama, bash Democrats, and bash big cities where he's not popular.
He loves the pizza, though.
Yeah, he loves the pizza, and he loves the politicians. I mean, they gave him the green light and the permits to build his tower. They gave him the green light and the permit to put his name on the tower, as you often point out when we go by the tower. So Chicago's been very good to Donald Trump, and it's still good to Donald Trump because whenever he needs to just bash Democrats and bash Democratic politicians, there's always Chicago, and he'll tweet it out. Anyway, he's coming to town. He's going to address the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson has vowed to boycott Trump's appearance. And I guess that's good that Eddie Johnson is sort of standing up for his city. I don't know how popular that is with a lot of, maybe some rank and file police officers may feel that's disrespectful to Donald Trump, but whatever. Eddie Johnson's making that stand. Now, coincidentally, Pat, Eddie Johnson is up in a little bit of hot water himself.
Yikes.
Because about a week ago, he was found slumped over his car outside, not far from his home in Bridgeport, and there's an investigation to determine whether he had a few too many to drink. They did not do any kind of blood test at that night when they discovered the police didn't test his blood, and so we really don't know. I guess there's no scientific evidence one way or the other whether he was drunk. But as soon as I saw that Eddie Johnson, word broke that he was going to boycott Donald Trump's speech, I had a feeling that somehow or other Donald Trump that news would find its way to Donald Trump, and he would respond with a tweet reminding people about Eddie Johnson's problems. And generally, he gets these updates from Fox TV. So it leads me to believe that Fox TV, the national Fox TV, hasn't figured out, one, that Eddie Johnson's boycotting the speech, or two, that Eddie Johnson is in trouble with this investigation. But when those two things are put together, you watch. Donald Trump will launch a salvo on Twitter.
I guarantee it's going to happen. I don't exactly know when this speech is, but you know he's going to have something to say about it as soon as Fox reminds him about it anyway. And, in talking about what you mentioned earlier with the, basically untruths that, it's hard to keep up with the tweets and that. I mean, he did it in front of cameras today. I was kind of watching on two different videos as the budget speech was going on. President Trump was giving a quick speech. It's not a presser. He didn't take questions on Syria. I believe Mike Pompeo was with him, and I don't know if it was Mulvaney. There was one other person. But he literally said, I just talked to this general over there. All the prisoners are secure. And I was literally looking at Twitter on my phone, and 100 ISIS-related prisoners escaped in Syria. I mean, this is happening in real time. This isn't like a denial of something that happened earlier. These things happen very quickly. And I did want to mention there's a great NPR article from October 10th with the passing of Representative Elijah Cummings. A big deal that happened in the last week, something that affected me in a big way. That guy really knew what he was about, had his priorities in order, especially, he kept focus under the Trump administration. But the headline from NPR's Twitter analysis shows how Trump tweets differently about non-white lawmakers. So it gives specific words that are highlighted about, of course, the Squad, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and it just gives you a full list of what it is he has said. For instance, so bad for our country, vile and disgusting statements, stuff like that. And you can click on those, and it takes you directly the tweets he makes. But if I had to pick one tweet to give you first, it would be one from October 20th, so it was 3 days ago, at 2:15 p.m., a tweet from the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Mark Esperanto, Secretary of Defense, quote, "The ceasefire is holding up very nicely. There are some minor skirmishes that have ended quickly. New areas being resettled with Kurds," end quote. "USA soldiers are not in combat or ceasefire zones. We have secured the oil, bringing soldiers home."
Wow.
So
we have secured the oil.
We have secured. So first of all, that's not getting any play. Like, with everything that's happening, no one is talking about the fact that the only troops he wanted to leave behind were to watch the oil fields. And I mean, this is in direct correlation to what he said about the Iraq War, although he's had 8 different positions happen. He said, I thought we shouldn't go. And then afterward, he was like, well, I thought we should have went and just started the oil because that's why we went in the first place. And people are like, whoa, wow, it's a lot of clarity. But the big deal is that tweet began with Mark Esperanto. That is not the name of the Secretary of Defense, Ben. Do you know the name of the Secretary of Defense? It's really hard. It's hard to keep track these days.
Yeah, it is hard. I can't remember at the moment. But it's not Mark Esperanto?
It is not Mark Esperanto.
So we got the wrong. That's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, it's Esper. It's Esper.
Okay.
So I probably a autocorrect, I'm sure there'd be a lot of ducking in his tweets if he had his say.
Yes. And as somebody who has suffered from the autocorrect with texting, all right?
Yes.
Now, I'm not really familiar with the tweeting games. You tell me the same thing goes on with Twitter, all right?
Yeah, he said Esperanto. There is...
let's let's give him some credit there. That was but so nobody felt they didn't go back and edit it?
No. I'm pretty sure it's still... No, I think it might have been a screenshot that I saw. He might have taken it down, but... This has happened many times. There are many tweets out there of the president misspelling things, and I think that also lends itself to the fact that you can always tell when it isn't him tweeting, when he'll use like big words, like negotiation and stuff like that.
So do you think he was the one who tweeted that one about Esperanto?
I absolutely think so, because anyone with half a brain in their head on staff would be like, let's check this for misspellings before we show it to the entire world.
Yeah, but it's just, what a bizarre. I mean, it's not funny, but it is funny. Just like
you gotta laugh.
There's the war, the ceasefire is holding. There's nobody getting killed. We brought the troops home, but the oil fields are secure. Everything's been accomplished. Even if one thing contradicts the other. Of course, I was just saying this about our budget speech today, where on one hand, the mayor was saying, I'm going to dip into the TIF slush fund to help pay the bills this year. But I am also eradicating the TIF slush fund. So
wild.
Yeah, I guess people can, hold two separate thoughts in their mind at one time.
Sure. Walk and chew gum.
Pat Whalen is my guest. We'll take a break and we'll be right back after this. Hey, everybody. What you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffemanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. Jeff. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel. Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
By improving how we collect the debt we are owed, this budget also saves an additional $25 million by moving to a new system that ensures payments are expedited and more companies are brought into compliance. This budget restructures some of our city departments, ensuring taxpayers get the greatest value for their dollars while still receiving the highest quality service. And as we announced earlier this month, this budget reforms our public safety agencies by streamlining the administrative functions of our police, fire, and OEMC departments into a single agency, the new Office of Public Safety Administration, which will immediately save the city $2 million. But these are more than just cost-saving measures. By consolidating these units, we will be putting more than 160 police officers and fire personnel back on the streets where they can do the most good.
All right, everybody, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, October 23rd is just moments away. By the way, if you're on the live stream and it happens to go down, well, that means my phone died. So we're going to try and keep it on as long as we can here, but we're hooking the sound up through my phone. So, hey, if the show just stops, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites. And I suggest if that'd be the time to do that, if you've yet to do that. So, all right. Hour number 2 is brought to you by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150, and, of course, today's show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Wednesday, October 23rd, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we welcome back activist Lavonte Stewart, and we have a congressional candidate in the building, 3rd Congressional Democratic candidate, Marie Newman. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Lavonte Stewart is in the building. Lavonte Stewart is in the building. Welcome back, Levante. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, Ben.
Get me a little closer to that microphone. Yeah. There you go. All right, now, I did this the last time Levante was on the show, and I said I would do it again. In his day job, Levante works for State Treasurer Michael Frerichs. In the rest of his life, he is an activist in South Shore, which is a community on the lakefront in the city of Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, just south of Hyde Park, helping people out with the geography a little bit, Levante. And so I always like to say, this is an official statement. The views and opinions expressed by Levante, and he's got a lot of them, do not in any way reflect those of Michael Frerichs. So that's correct. If you don't like what he says, blame him. Don't blame Frerichs, all right, Levante?
There we go.
All right, that is said. So he's speaking as a private citizen. I just want to remind everybody out there, he's got First Amendment protected rights to say what's on his mind, and I welcome him to say this on the show, and he's speaking as a private citizen. And I value what you say, Levante, because we told your personal story the last time we were in your show. You're a Chicago kid, born and raised, grown up, raised your family here, from you're very active in your community, and you have your own worldview based on the experiences you've had growing up in the city of Chicago, attending many schools here in the city of Chicago. You tested out this high school, that high school, so anyway, you have some interesting worldview, and that's why I like to bring you on the show. I don't know if I always agree with you or you always agree with me, but I appreciate you coming into the show.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me back. And it's okay to disagree, right? Agree to disagree. I love to agree to disagree with people.
Well, let's start.
Well, I don't agree with that. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
Already.
I agree with that.
All right, before we get started, why don't you tell folks a little bit about what you're doing in South Shore? You were telling me you're at the Bears game on Sunday, and I think we'll all agree in the studio the Bears completely and totally suck. So now we'll move on from the things that we agree with to talk about what you were doing at
But have you been reading, I don't know, man, all of these wild trade rumors are starting to come up. Have you read the one about Cam?
No.
Yeah, it's probably not real. I mean, people are probably
Cam Newton?
Yeah. People are
Who would they trade for him?
Half the team.
Can we get Trubisky right now? I'll trade you Ryan
Can you
Pace,
get Mitch on the
gentleman.
show? You need to get Mitch on the show. He needs to talk to Chicago.
Mitch is like hiding under that table right now.
Oh, when he said Cam Newton, Ben's face lit up.
I
Live
know.
stream viewers saw that.
I mean, a legitimate quarterback?
Somebody that can follow their reads and do something with the ball.
All right, but you were at the Bears game on Sunday?
Yeah. So I'm at the Bears game every home game right now. So here's the reason why. I mentioned last time on the show, I'm founding executive director of a small non-for-profit called Lost Boys, Inc. But I think we're beginning to garner a little national recognition for our work and a little recognition here at home. So we're a sports-based youth development organization. So we use the power of sport for social good and social change with children and their development. So anyway, short version of it is we're there because we are participating in Airmark has this wonderful NPO program. DNC had it too when they were the concession provider for Soldier Field. But it's one of the very few professional or sports organizations that does this, that allows nonprofits to come in and get in on the profit sharing, shall we say, right? So what happens is we have a concession stand for the entire season. We do Bears home games, we do concerts, we do soccer games, we did the Chicago Football Classic. So any event that's happening at Soldier Field, we're there. What happens is we get a take home of about 10 to 11 to 12% of the total net profit, right? The revenue from that stand. So on average, we'll generate like 14,000 in sales. So that's like a take home of anywhere from 14 to 1,700 per event for Lost Boys, minus any mess ups there. But here's the idea behind it. So what we're doing with this fundraising opportunity, instead of dumping this money just back into general operating revenue, we have a program called Successful Youth Leaders, which is a continuum of service program. So when kids are too old to play baseball or softball, what we do is roll them into this program, and everything is kind of the same structure, except instead of playing, now they work. We introduce them to the workforce through one of 4 industries that tie back to baseball. They can become a junior coach. They can become a sports journalist analyst, statistician. They can become a grounds crew member, or they can become a junior umpire, which of course they can get certified in that, right? And then they can go out and go to IHSA, try to get in there, or whatever they do, they can make $50 a game or more, right? So anyway, part of what we're doing with that concept is taking this money that we've made at the stand, and it becomes seed capital for that particular cohort in a given year, that cohort of kids. That money then is used as seed capital for a micro enterprise. So the kids create, manage, and own a business that will revolve back around sports. So this first cohort of kids that are working it now, they're going to open a concession business, so a mobile food truck, right? I've been trying to do this like 10 years. So they'll take the revenue we made from that, and they'll create a mobile food cart at some point this year. They will be the business owners. They can work it if they want. It's up to them. We'll figure it out this year. We'll come up with the business plan and do everything that we need to do.
Will they make the food themselves?
If that's what they decide they want to do.
Yeah.
So we'll look at it. But what's great about this opportunity, and particularly going into that type of industry, is they're already acclimated. They're doing it now.
Well, you know what? My sports brain picked up on something you said, and this is something that has always upset me over the years. I'm a diehard sports fan. That doesn't upset me, although the Chicago sports, they're so bad these days, upsets me. But I know so many black kids, Levante, who love sports as much as I do, are obsessed about sports as much as I don't know if you were that kind of kid, but I know so many. I could have conversation with them. We could talk about just the first name. They pick up on it. They know statistics. They know, and it just seems like black kids are channeled into playing sports, as opposed to talking about sports or writing about sports or being a general manager. You understand what I'm saying? It's
Absolutely.
like there's many more opportunities to talk about sports, write about sports, it's a growing industry, as opposed to playing sports. There's relatively few spots, and yet society just doesn't encourage black kids to think that way. Do you follow what I'm saying?
No, absolutely, and I'm glad you brought up that point because we're still, as a society, stuck in that place, right? I always liken myself, or I tell people when we talk about generations, I say I'm from the boys in the hood generation, although I'm Generation X, but that's the time that those type of movies came out, right? The late 90s, right? Menace to Society, Boys in the Hood. These movies were reflective of black culture and black life and what was happening in our communities as young people. And so one of the things even then that you picked up on early in those movies, it was always said for black boys, you're either going to be a rapper or a ball player, right? And so that theme has been consistent over these last, 20 years or so. It's still the same way, right? They want to be an entertainer or you want to be a ball player. And so that was that line of thinking that got us thinking this way. So, talking with our board chairwoman, we really envisioned something that gives kids a greater opportunity. And so what we found was that, listen, everybody's not going to go to the MLB. That's coming through our program. Probably 0.00001% of our kids will play professional sports. Mm-hmm. But we wanted them to understand the opportunities behind the scenes of sports, right? Opportunities that exist in collegiate sports. That you can be the guy that's cutting the grass at Wrigley and turning the dirt, and you're making six figures.
Yeah.
That's a great windfall. That's a great payday. And you're still in sports.
Yeah, you're still in proximity to what you love.
Yeah. So same way, I didn't make sport into the next level. And so that's probably so much more satisfying for me than still trying to play myself because it's bigger than me.
Yeah. And not just, but also my pet peeve is in the media. To be present in the media, writing about it, talking about it. There's opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I like Evan Moore. Right here,
my beloved.
From South Shore. Woo woo. Yes.
Did you see? When I rushed you in, you didn't get a chance to see him. All right, now speaking of South Shore, speaking of Chicago, get your thoughts on Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is coming to Chicago. He's going to speak at the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Eddie Johnson has vowed to boycott that event. I told Pat I predicted that Donald Trump before too long will have a tweet blasting Eddie Johnson.
Of course. Has it come yet?
I haven't seen it yet. You got to wait for it to air on Fox TV. They point out all the what's going on
in the middle
here.
of the night.
So what's your thoughts about Eddie Johnson boycotting? You support that?
Yeah, I do. Kudos to Eddie. It's a big stand. It's standing with his city. It's standing with Chicago. Chicago has taken a lashing from this particular president. And it's very ironic given that the last president, Chicago claimed him. And so, now we've got a guy coming in that's just really bad-mouthing the city. So if for no other good reason, there's a reason for Chicago to unite. It doesn't matter if we're black, white, Hispanic, north side, south side. Nobody talks about our city, man. So I'm with Eddie on that. And the president, he can come in and speak. He's got the constitutional right. I wouldn't want to stop him just when he was on the campaign trail. Come in and speak. It's your right.
And Eddie has the constitutional right not to attend the speech.
Exactly.
And I agree with you on that one. But I think there's a political, motivation for Donald Trump to bash Chicago. Absolutely, because of, just as you alluded, Chicago is considered the hometown of Barack Obama. Actually, I guess Hawaii is hometown, but whatever. Yeah. Put that aside. It's his political hometown.
Right.
It's where he got his start of his political career. Still has a home not far from South Shore in Kenwood. And so when Donald Trump bashes Chicago, he's effectively bashing Barack Obama, Democrats, and the policies they didn't implement. So it's a political tool for him.
Absolutely. Everything with this particular president is political. This is why we're talking about an impeachment inquiry, because he can't differentiate from his role in governing with his political role. He's conflating the two. So, everything is political with this guy.
Were you more offended than usual with his lynching tweet?
So, yes and no. Here's the reason no. This is Donald Trump. It's a deflection. It's to take our eyes off of what's happening with the impeachment inquiry, more evidence that's coming behind the Ukrainian scandal and all these other scandals. So he always throws something out there to deflect, right? He always throws out the shiny object and says, go, Rover, go get that, right? And then we chase the bone and we miss the real point of what's going on. So we know that there's new information coming out. We know that there are very key individuals. I think it's Bill Taylor that just testified recently.
Yeah.
And I think, and I've been asking a lot of my colleagues who are very politically knowledgeable. I'm like, this has got to be a big stone here. This has got to be a large rock. Out of all of the rocks that he's thrown at his own glass house, this has finally got to be the stone that's going to bring the house kind of crumbling down, I would think. And so just following, what's going on in those stories, the guy's just using this as a way to deflect, right? So, and I'm not one personally. I'm not one. I made 44 a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things I learned about my age at this point in life is not to be so sensitive about everything. We've gotten to a place in society that is scary. Everything is so sensitive, right? I can come in here and say, Ben doesn't like turkey breast. And now all of a sudden you've got 50 million haters that are sending you, hate texts because you don't like turkey breast. Because everybody has just gotten so sensitive in this country. And, which concerns me too, like with our whole teacher strike.
All right, we're going to get into the teacher strike because you and I may be on different sides of this one a little bit.
Yeah, probably.
But what would your advice be to Chicago Congressman in regards to Donald Trump's lynching tweet? Bobby Rush denounced it in his own tweet.
Well, listen, I think all of the leaders that need to denounce it have denounced it. I think this country, we're smart enough to understand our sordid and twisted history with lynchings, right? So we should know how sensitive that people should be over that particular topic and just throwing things out there, right? But I don't think it's one to kind of get all tied up in a knot. It's Donald Trump, and it's just a deflection again.
I will say, and I'd look for your take on this. Even Mitch McConnell gave a statement and said this was a very poor choice of words. I don't agree with this. But you have people like Lindsey Graham and stuff who are towing the line for the president, and that is almost scarier to me than him throwing out this rhetoric and making this distraction. It's his ability to rein in people and say, no, you know what? It is a lynching. Lindsey Graham said it's a lynching in every sense of the word.
Right.
What?
Yeah. That is what's most scary about him that we have to watch is that ability to just kind of throw things around and just stir up trouble with folks.
You mean, and also just the blind allegiance that he has.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Lindsey Graham. All right, let's get to the teacher strike.
Oh, boy.
By the way, I'd say nice things about Lori Lightfoot because I believe she's going to be in the Sun-Times
like Lori.
building. Yeah, I know you're going to. I know
she's in the building.
She's in the building.
I voted for Tony, but I like Lori. She's okay.
Did you vote for Tony in both times?
I did.
Okay. I voted for Lori both times. How about that?
Yeah.
I'm not really that completely happy with her right now with this teacher strike, but I did vote for her twice. So what's your general view and take of the teacher strike?
Okay, so first, Stacey Davis Gates and the CTU do not, take it too hardcore, right? I love CTU. I am an unwavering fan. I think I mentioned that last time. My mother is a special education teacher. We actually argued about this yesterday on the way home from a funeral. So here's my whole take on it.
You were arguing with your mother about this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'm with your mother. I haven't even heard what you said, but I think I'm with your mother.
Well,
in general, I'm with mothers. Okay, go ahead.
We argued about that topic you just brought up about blind allegiance, and I think...
Like blind allegiance to mothers.
Turning it around.
I'll tell you
that
what,
carries
Lavonte
over in a
Stewart
lot of
thinks
things,
he's slick.
man.
Just flip that one right on me. Go ahead.
Well, no. So here's my take on it. Again, I am extremely a supporter of CTU. The last strike against Rahm, they needed to. He deserved that. He treated them very disrespectfully. He didn't have the considerations. He was making a lot of decisions for communities and not soliciting input from those communities. Lori, I think, is different. Give her a chance. That's my point, right? Here, we're talking about an issue that has existed for over 40 years in this city. And let's be honest, it has utterly impacted communities of color the most, black schools and Hispanic schools, right? So this is something that's been existing, some of it by design. I mean, we can always go all the way back to the wagons.
Willis wagons.
The Willis wagons, right. So there are a lot of discrepancies in education that tie back to this. My problem is this. I like baseball analogies. If it's the seventh inning, my team is down to, I'm a coach. I'm not telling my players to go in and swing for the fences. We're going to play small ball. We're going to get on base, move the runners, try to score, and tie this game up, and maybe take the lead. We're not swinging for the fences. Small ball. They should not be swinging for the fences. They're trying to get a 40 years plus worth of stuff in one swoop, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
So when you told this to your mother, what did she say to you?
Oh, she was livid. Well, we deserve counselors in the class. We deserve more nurses. We do need smaller class sizes, and I don't disagree with any of it.
Yeah.
But as a public administrator, there is a reality that sinks in from the finance side of things, right? I mean, just alone, the very reasonable pension, the raise increase that they've been offered to 16%. Mm-hmm. I think I was reading the other day, and I've been trying to do a lot of reading and come up with numbers. I think someone said that it will already cost us to the tune of like $351 million, right, just to increase current salaries. So now when you start talking about bringing in school counselors, nurses, to reduce class sizes, that means you have to hire more teachers or more teacher assistants. So there is a rising cost with that. Then not to mention, we've got to put in place pensions for people that we hire, right? Mm-hmm. If we're talking about a livable wage, so now we got to sustain that like we don't already have a big pension problem, right? So I think we needed to step back from it. And I think also this was a great time to talk to this new mayor, give her a chance. That's my point. Give her a chance and give our new school CEO a chance. We're talking about a lifetime educator, someone who's been an educator, been a principal, put her own kids through CPS, right? Who went through CPS. This is what we've been waiting for.
Well, I just want to point out,
education.
She's not new. She was appointed by the previous mayor.
Well, new in the sense of
not new.
Yeah, well, new mayor. So given the ones we've had, she's been the best one so far. She's in-house, homegrown, understands it. Give them all a chance. Give this new mayor a chance. What I'm saying is, Ben, I think what would have been more realistic to me was to say, hey, can we work on a 20% increase in this and make it incremental over the next 4 years? Let's hire 15 to 20 more percent of counselors that we need this year, and nurses and school assistants and teachers.
Well, you could do that, put that in the contract. I mean, the reality is, by the way, I'd still 100% agree with your mother. The reality is, if the teachers hadn't gone on strike, they would not even be negotiating over hiring more nurses and social workers. They wouldn't put it in the contract. The only reason that Lori Lightfoot and Janice Jackson and their lawyer have made that little movement to what we as a society say we need for kids in the poorest schools is because the teachers went on strike. I can't think of any instance in the history of the world, Levante, where anybody with power willingly gave up that power to help somebody who's not in their world without being pressured to it. So it's not like Lori Lightfoot walked into office and said, you know what I want to do? I want to listen to Lavonte Stewart's mother and hire more nurses and hire more social workers and hire more counselors. No, she wasn't going to do it until Stacey Davis Gates led all those teachers out into the streets. So I would like to believe that goodness resides in the hearts of the people that we elect to lead us. But Levante, I have to agree with your mother. I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that that goodness does reside in those hearts and that people will willingly make these concessions and that the Lori Lightfoots and the Rahm Emanuels and the Richard M. Daley's of the world will turn to corporate Chicago and say, hey, fellas, you've had it good for a long time. We got these kids on Lavonte Stewart's baseball team who are really struggling. They go to schools without nurses. They go to schools without social workers. They go to schools without librarians. You're going to have to give up a little something. You're going to have to give it up to help. And I'm not just talking about a donation to the Youth League.
Right.
I'm talking about serious year-to-year donation in terms of higher taxes to pay for the programs we need to eradicate inequity. Now, help me out. Have you ever seen in your history of your life a person in a position of power do what I just said without being forced to do it?
You know what? That is a good point. Probably not. I mean, you know, how the old saying is, power is not giving up anything without demand, right? There's another way it's worded. That's my version.
Frederick Douglass.
But again, I don't know, Ben. I'm just stuck in the sense of, I feel like We have to be innovative. We have to try new things, new tricks. It's like going to the same old bag of tricks. Yeah, I know it hasn't been a lot of strikes. The last strike prior to the most recent one was what, like 1983 or something?
87.
Now and strong. We started fundraising earlier. I started fundraising in the middle of February. Last time I started in May. So we have a lot more than any bad money, right? So our average donation is $46 per donation. Dan's is like, I don't know, $1,800 or something crazy like that. So shuttled and scuttled, I say, last time was my economic message. I have run businesses. I've run national coalitions. I've built national nonprofit models. I've rolled out national programs. Dan's never done any of inequality. A lot of things will get better quickly. If we pass paid leave, universal child care, raise wages, Medicare for all of those make everybody's life better, and we can keep addressing things. So for me, and breathing 24/7, 365, all day long, addressing income inequality, the income divide. So we call that making your life more affordable.
All right. Now, in addition to these issues, you wish yourself from Congressman Lipinski on the big one, is reproductive rights. In that last election in 2018, you made it clear he is perhaps the most conservative anti-abortion congressman on the Democratic side on Lipinski's behalf. Do you think that swung the district against you, that particular issue?
I think that there was not one thing singularly, if I'm being honest, Ben. I think there's probably like 30 things that happened in the last 3 weeks, because we were up about 3 points going into the last 2 weeks of the and hurt my husband, my child, and my mother, quite frankly, that were vile. And so the machine dirty tricks had an effect. Certainly the crazy kooky ads with me being a terrorist and a criminal and all that kooky stuff, which I didn't care about. It was the stuff on the ground that was really the bad stuff. But suppression of the vote, for sure. That she, really did everything that they know. I believe that smart people at the doors this time will help people understand that don't listen to these. If it sounds cuckoo, it's probably cuckoo, right? And we're being very thoughtful about our election protection process this time. We have an election protection committee on the campaign. We have dozens of lawyers working on this, and we are prepared for GOTV and election as well as the day of. And still under me.
All right, we'll talk about the hardball tactics. Again, as I said earlier, the first thing I said to Marie when I first met her way back when was, you don't know what you're going up against, and you probably know way more than I do by now, having done that already. But let's just talk again. So you're not going to take the stance that some Democrats have done, where if they're attacked for being too much pro-choice, to go the other way, abandon your principles? Are you sticking to your pro-choice?
Oh, no, 100% pro-choice. Okay. What I'm saying is that what I'm hearing in the 209 meet and greets, their priority is income inequality and me making life more affordable through legislation that I would pass. Okay. And anybody, it is very clear I'm 100% choice. It is clear that I'm 100% equality. One of the other big issues in our district is immigration. And we are letting everybody know what Dan's real record is on immigration. And it's not just that he voted against the DREAM Act, that he went down to the border. It's 2-3 months ago now. He was interviewed by the Tribune and Fox News. And he came back and said, the first thing out of his mouth, they said, generally, Congressman, what are your thoughts? And said, gosh, I'm so worried about the Border Patrol agents. First thing out of his mouth, and nothing else. Then asked and pressed, what did you think of the conditions? Not that bad. So he saw what we saw, Ben, right? Is that what we see when we see folks at the border every single time in those detention camps? He saw people sleeping, standing up, that there was, there's health epidemics down there, that there's no diapers, there's not enough water, there's not enough food, and the lights are on all damn day and night. He saw the same exact things, and he came back and said, it's not that bad. Right there, let's take away all of his horrible history of, voting against Obamacare and continuing to vote against the interests of people in his district in every way. But that is disqualifying, because that tells me intellectually and emotionally you don't understand what a huge problem that is and how it is the antithesis of the American way, what's happening at the border right now. So that's disqualifying.
And do you think voters in the third will respond to that message?
They already are. I mean, look, I not only have I had the 209 meet and greets, but I have been all over the district. I've been in every precinct. There's 500 precincts several times already. I know what's going on the ground. Dan does not, because he doesn't go on the ground.
Marie Newman is my guest. She's running for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District. She's a Democrat. Let me just point that out as a Democratic primary.
That's right.
Dan Lipinski is the most conservative Democrat in Congress. I believe everybody agrees. I think Dan Lipinski would agree with that as well.
Sure.
In addition to his stance on immigration issues that Marie's pointing out, he's vociferously against a woman's right to choose, has always been, and he would be proud of it. He would say, yes, I am against a woman's right to choose, against reproductive rights. So if that's your driving issue, one way or the other, you know who to vote for one way or the other in this election. No doubt about it. You would agree with me on that point, Marie.
Yeah, no, and look, in the district, it's really clear that the progressive platform and the Democratic platform is overwhelmingly what people want.
All right. When we come back, we'll take a break. We come back, we'll talk impeachment. We'll talk hardball, Southwest side politics. I may even throw in a Nancy Pelosi question for Marie. We'll be right back after this.
No, it sounds infuriating because at least we get to have the truth, right? At least we should have the truth. One of the things that undergirds this process is integrity.
I knew you could handle that. So I'm going to ask about hardball tactics this time around. I'm going to ask you impeachment.
Shots. They called shots for these buildings down here. They called shots for that wealthy playground in Lincoln Park. We get to call shots for our public schools. You're absolutely right. This is not an autocracy. This is a democracy. People made a vote because she said that she was going to transform. We are holding her accountable. Next question.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Live from the Chicago Sun-Times, spinning Jay, take us home.
Marie Newman in the studio with me. She's running for Congress in the 3rd Congressional. I don't know if that will be there for our downloaders, but Dennis just played a a tape of Stacey Davis Gates, and I love it. She's on a roll. She's at that press conference. Next question. All right, Stacey's all fired up. Marie Newman, we were talking about your second time around. You're running for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District against Dan Lipinski one more time. Dan Lipinski is a Democrat, but he's the most conservative Democrat in Congress. And so this is really a test case. Can the 3rd Congressional District elect somebody who's a little more liberal than, like, basically a Republican? Let's just call it for what it is. Basically, did you say 2 percentage points in 2018? Now, one thing that's different this time around, there's a couple other candidates running who've announced. We'll see if they actually file and go forth with it. Have you taken that into consideration?
Yeah, we have contingency plans for any model, right? So first, let's see if those 2 individuals actually get on the ballot. That remains to be seen. The second thing is that if one of them makes it to the ballot, and we sense that only one of them will, that in fact we have lots of strategies around that. So I'm not particularly worried if there's a 3rd person on the ballot.
All right. Let's talk about the hardball that the Lipinski organization will throw at you. What are you expecting?
I think it'll be more of the same. I think that Dan didn't learn his lesson, that all of the people on the ground and in the parishes and all that didn't like what he called me and what he said about me and what he did to me. They all found it vile. He will probably try some of the same things, everything from underhanded tricks, walking door to door, doing this typical machine suppression tactics. My name wasn't on the ballot in 20 of the precincts. There were all kinds of vile things said at the doors by the Susan B. Anthony people. They flew in a bunch of young women from a couple of Christian colleges